The chase through shadows. The tunnel walls trembled as footsteps echoed above. Lyra's hand shook in Ethan's, her eyes wide with fear. The sound of heavy boots grew louder. The guards were getting closer. Ethan pressed a finger to his lips, signaling her to stay quiet. He could hear their metallic voices, sharp and cruel. "Find the human. He was seen near the waste sector," one said. "The council wants him alive." "Barely," replied the other. Ethan's mind raced. He had no weapons, no protection, only his small bag of tools. He whispered, "Lyra, follow me, but step where I step." The little alien nodded quickly, trying to hold back tears. Together, they moved deeper into the maintenance tunnels. Water dripped from broken pipes and the air smelled of rust and oil. Ethan could see faint red lights blinking ahead, power nodes still active. If he could reach them, maybe he could create a distraction. They stopped at a small junction, where the tunnels split into 3 paths. Ethan looked around, thinking fast. "Stay here," he said, kneeling beside her. "And don't move." Lyra clutched the small metal heart tightly. "Where are you going?" "I'm going to buy us a few seconds," he whispered. Then he pulled out a small tool from his belt, an old energy splicer. He opened a panel on the wall, sparks flying out with quick, careful movements. He rewired 2 cables and twisted a knob. The tunnel lights flickered, then exploded in a burst of white flash. The noise thundered through the tunnels. Echoing in every direction, the guards shouted, confused. Where did that come from? "Over there, move!" Their voices grew distant for a moment, just as Ethan returned to Lyra's side. "Come on," he said softly. "This way." They took the right path, crawling through a narrow gap that led to an old drainage corridor. Lyra struggled to keep up. Her small feet splashed in the shallow water. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dark. "Human," she whispered, panting. "Why do they hate you so much?" Ethan sighed, not looking back. "Because once humans fought them," he said, "and won." Her eyes widened. "You won?" He nodded. "Long ago, before I was born, humans were strong, too strong." "Then why are you here?" she asked, her voice small. Ethan hesitated. "Because power makes enemies and enemies never forget." They turned a corner and finally stopped inside a large chamber filled with scrap. Old robots, broken parts, and forgotten relics. "This will do," Ethan said, scanning the place. He quickly moved a few pieces of metal to cover the entrance. Lyra watched him work, amazed. "You're fast," she said. He smiled a little. "Comes with being human." The sound of footsteps returned, echoing faintly from the tunnel behind them. They weren't safe yet. Ethan looked around for a way out, but found only walls of junk and shadows. Then his eyes caught a faint light blinking from a tall machine buried in the scrap. An old security bot, inactive but maybe still working. He hurried to it, opened its chest plate, and began to connect wires. Lyra crawled closer, whispering, "What are you doing?" "Giving them something to chase," he said, grinning slightly. He pressed a switch. The bot's eyes flashed red. It stood for one moment, then walked out of the chamber. Making noise and flashing lights from the tunnels came a shout. "There! The human!" Ethan grabbed Lyra's hand again. "Now we move." They ran in the opposite direction, their breaths loud in the dark. The tunnel opened to the surface, a narrow street behind the market. The night air hit them, cold and wet. Lyra stumbled, but Ethan caught her. "Careful," he said gently. She looked up at him, her small face glowing under the neon lights. "Thank you, human," she whispered. "No one ever helped me before." Ethan looked at her, his voice soft. "Then maybe tonight is the first time," but just as he said that, a shadow moved on the rooftop above. A red laser dot appeared on his chest. Lyra gasped. "Ethan!" The shot fired and the night exploded into chaos. The whisper in the alley. The night was cold and the rain had just stopped. The streets of the alien trade district were empty, glowing faintly with blue lights from hanging orbs. Humans were not supposed to walk here after dark, but Ethan did. He was a scavenger, a human engineer stranded on this alien world called Rethar 9. He survived by fixing broken machines and trading scrap for food. As he walked through the narrow alleys, he heard a faint sound. It was soft, like a whisper carried by the wind. He turned his head, listening carefully. Then he heard it again, a trembling, tiny voice. "I'm searching." "The trash. For a birthday gift. For my mom, human." Ethan froze. The word human hit him like a shock. No alien ever said that word kindly. He stepped closer to the sound. And there, behind a pile of glowing trash, we saw her, a small alien girl barely half his height, with silver blue skin and large luminous eyes. Her thin hands were shaking as she dug through the waste piles. Her clothes were torn and her feet were bare. "What are you doing out here?" Ethan asked softly. The little alien gasped and hid behind a metal crate. Her eyes widened, filled with fear. "Don't hurt me," she whispered. "I just wanted something for my mom. Her birthday is tomorrow." Ethan knelt down, his voice calm. "I won't hurt you," he said. "What's your name?" She hesitated. "Lyra." Ethan noticed her hands were bleeding, small cuts from sharp metal pieces. He took out a piece of cloth from his pocket and slowly offered it to her. "Here, take this," he said. "You'll get sick if you don't clean your hands." She stared at him, confused. "Why are you helping me?" "You're human." He smiled weakly. "Maybe because no one helped me when I was alone." The wind blew cold again, and Ethan looked around. Something felt wrong in the distance. He saw two tall figures, Wraithar guards, scanning the streets. They hated humans, and if they found him talking to a child from their kind, it would mean trouble. He quickly whispered, "Lyra, we have to go. Now." But she shook her head. "I can't go home. They'll be angry I talked to a human." Ethan sighed. "Then stay quiet, follow me." He led her through narrow paths, between broken pipes and flickering neon lights. They stopped inside an old maintenance tunnel, dark but safe. She sat down, clutching a small broken trinket she had found in the trash, a rusty metal heart. "This was the prettiest thing I found," she said softly. "Do you think my mom will like it?" Ethan looked at the small heart and smiled sadly. "It's old," he said, "but it's honest." Lyra tilted her head. "Honest?" He nodded. "It means it comes from love, not price." For a moment silence filled the tunnel. But then a loud metallic sound echoed from above. The guards had found their trail. Ethan's heart pounded. "They're close," he whispered. Lyra looked at him, terrified. "If they find us, they'll take you away." Ethan took a deep breath. "Then we better make sure they don't." The tunnel lights flickered. Shadows danced on the walls, and for the first time, the little alien girl reached out her tiny hand. "Please don't leave me, human," she said quietly. Ethan gripped her hand, firm and steady. "I won't," he whispered. "Not tonight." Outside, the alien guards' voices grew nearer. Inside the tunnel, a strange bond had just begun. The shot and the secret, the red beam flashed, and Ethan pushed Lyra down. The shot hit the wall behind them, burning a deep mark into the metal. Dust fell from the rooftop as Ethan pulled her into cover. Another laser fired, slicing through the air. Missing his head by inches, he could feel the heat. "Smell the burn of plasma, stay low," he whispered, grabbing Lyra's arm. She was shaking, eyes wide in panic. "They found us." "I know," he muttered, scanning the rooftops. "And they don't miss twice." He picked up a piece of metal pipe and threw it down the alley. A laser followed the sound, giving him a direction there, a sniper drone, perched above the roof, red eyes scanning. Ethan took a deep breath. He knew he couldn't fight it. Not with his bare hands, but he could think. He spotted a power conduit glowing near the building wall. "Lyra," he said quickly, "see that panel? Pull the lever when I say now." She nodded, trembling. "Okay." He grabbed an old, broken dish from the trash and leaned out just enough to reflect the red laser beam. The drone recalibrated, trying to focus. "Now," he shouted. Lyra pulled the lever. Sparks exploded from the conduit, sending a burst of energy into the air. The drone sparked, its red lights flickering before it fell from the roof with a loud crash. Smoke filled the alley for a few seconds, silence. Then Ethan looked at her and smiled. "Nice work, kid." Lyra smiled faintly, tears still in her eyes. "I thought we would die." Ethan laughed softly. "You'll find that humans don't die so easily." But the peace didn't last long. A sharp humming filled the air, engines, heavy ones. 3 armored skimmers approached from the main street, glowing blue under the rain. "Patrols," Ethan whispered. "We need to move." He led her through the smoke, deeper into the maze of alleys. Lyra clutched the small metal heart in her hand, afraid to drop it as they ran. Ethan noticed her limping. "Are you hurt?" he asked. She nodded. "My leg. I fell on the sharp metal." He knelt, checked her leg, a deep cut, bleeding. He tore part of his sleeve and wrapped it tight. "You'll be okay," he said softly. "You're tougher than you look." Her eyes softened. My mom always says that too. Ethan smiled, but then stopped suddenly. At the end of the path stood a tall alien figure, wearing black armor and holding an energy staff. A commander. The alien's voice was deep, calm and cold, a step away from the child. Human, Lyra gasped. Commander Threx. Ethan's mind raced. He had no weapon, no way out, and Lyra was injured. But something in the commander's tone made him hesitate. It wasn't just anger. It was fear. The commander's eyes glowed faintly, scanning Ethan. You're not supposed to exist here, he said. The humans were all gone? Ethan finished. You believe that too, huh? Threx tightened his grip on the staff. If the council learns I found a living human, they'll... He stopped, eyes flicking to Lyra. Child, why are you with him? Lyra stepped forward weakly. He helped me. He saved me. The commander's face changed, confusion, even disbelief. He lowered his weapon slightly. You helped her? A human? Ethan shrugged. Didn't plan it. Just happened. Before anyone could speak again, a loud explosion shook the ground. The skimmers had found them, firing into the alley. Threx looked up, eyes narrowing. Go, he ordered, turning to face the noise. Ethan stared surprised. You're helping us? Threx didn't look back. If the council learns what I've seen, none of us will live. Ethan grabbed Lyra's hand. Running into the smoke again, behind them, Threx raised his staff. Energy flashing bright, the night filled with sound and fire, shouts, and the clash of power. And as Ethan and Lyra disappeared into the shadows, she looked up and whispered, Human. Why did he help us? Ethan looked ahead, voice quiet. Because maybe not everyone believes the lies anymore. The forgotten ruins, smoke and dust filled the streets as Ethan carried Lyra through the chaos. Blinding lights from patrol ships swept across the ruins, searching for any sign of movement. The ground trembled with each blast, shaking loose pieces of metal and stone. Ethan's lungs burned, but he didn't stop. He followed the narrow path through broken walls until they reached a collapsed bridge. Beneath it was a dark tunnel leading deep underground. He jumped down carefully, holding Lyra close, and landed hard but safe. For a moment, silence returned. Only their breathing echoed through the hollow tunnel. Ethan set Lyra down gently. You okay? She nodded weakly. My leg hurts, but I can walk. He looked around. This tunnel was old. Older than the alien city above. Strange symbols glowed faintly on the walls. Dust floated in the beam of his flashlight. What is this place? He whispered. Lyra looked around too, her eyes wide. I've never seen this before, she said softly. My mom once told me that below the city, there are old ruins from before the wars. Ethan brushed dirt off a wall and froze. Carved into the stone was something impossible. A human handprint. Not alien, not symbolic, human. The shape was clear, and beside it, faded words in English. We will return. Ethan stepped back. Heart-pounding, Lyra tilted her head. What does it mean? He whispered. It means humans were here, long before you were born. His voice trembled slightly. And they planned to come back. They followed the tunnel deeper. The air grew colder, and strange humming sounds echoed through the darkness. Lyra's glowing eyes helped light the path, she whispered. Why did humans leave? Did you run away? Ethan sighed. No, he said quietly. We were forced out, defeated. Or so they thought, she frowned. But you said humans won the war. He nodded slowly. We did, but victory has a price. He looked at her with a sad smile. Sometimes, survival means disappearing. They entered a large chamber, filled with machines buried in dust, old consoles, broken screens, and metal crates were scattered everywhere. Ethan brushed his hand across one of the panels. It hummed faintly under his touch. Still has power, he said in surprise. He opened a control box and began reconnecting the circuits. Sparks jumped. Lights flickered on for the first time in centuries. Lyra gasped. It's alive. A holographic image flickered in the center of the room. It was faint, static-filled, and that a human woman in a faded uniform. Her voice came through in broken tones. If anyone finds this, we were not destroyed. Project Haven continues. Protect the children. Then the image vanished. Ethan stared at the empty air, his eyes wide. That was human technology, he whispered. Lyra looked at him, confused. What was she saying? He took a deep breath. It means there might be others hidden, alive, Before he could say more, a sharp metallic sound came from behind. Ethan turned fast, pulling Lyra close. From the shadows, a small drone floated into view. Glowing blue, scanning the room, its voice was monotone. Unauthorized life forms detected. Lyra hid behind Ethan, terrified. He quickly pulled a wire from his belt and jammed it into the console. The screen sparked again, sending a pulse of static energy through the air. The drone buzzed, lights flickering, then fell to the floor silent. Ethan exhaled. That was close. Lyra stepped out slowly, eyes on the fallen machine. Why did it call us unauthorized? She asked. He sighed. Because this place doesn't belong to your people. It was built by mine. Suddenly, a faint echo came from deeper inside the ruins, a metallic voice, calm and old. Human signature detected. Welcome back. Lyra grabbed Ethan's sleeve, her voice shaking. Who said that? Ethan looked toward the sound, his heart racing. I think, he whispered. We're not alone down here. The air grew colder. Lights began to flicker on across the ruins. Somewhere ahead, something ancient and human had just awakened. The voice of the past, the sound echoed through the chamber again, low and mechanical. Human signature detected. Welcome back. Ethan froze where he stood, every muscle tight. Lyra clung to his sleeve, her glowing eyes darting around the room. Who's talking? She whispered, voice trembling. Ethan raised his flashlight, scanning the shadows. The light caught a massive metal door at the far end of the chamber. Symbols glowed faintly across it, and the air around it shimmered with static energy. The voice spoke once more, clearer this time. Identity confirmed, human genome registered. Initiating reactivation sequence. The ground trembled softly beneath their feet. Dust fell from the ceiling as the giant door began to open with a deep metallic groan. Cold air poured out from within, carrying a faint hum, like something old awakening after a long sleep. Ethan's breath caught. Inside was a narrow corridor lined with lights that flickered one by one as they came alive. He looked at Lyra and said quietly, "Stay close no matter what," she nodded, gripping the metal heart tightly in her small hands. They stepped inside. The corridor stretched into darkness, and the walls were covered with faded human markings, warning labels, faded numbers, and old military logos. At the end of the hall was a large chamber filled with pods, hundreds of them arranged in a perfect circle. Each pod was covered in frost, and through the glass, faint outlines of human forms could be seen. Lyra gasped. "Ethan, are they sleeping?" He swallowed hard. "Cryopods," he said softly. "They're humans." He walked to the nearest one, wiping the frost from the glass. Inside was a man in a dark uniform, still and silent. The label read, Captain Jonas Rell, status, in stasis, Project Haven. Ethan felt his heart pound. Project Haven, the name from the hologram. They hadn't died, they had hidden. Lyra looked around in awe. "They were here all along," she whispered. He nodded slowly. "Waiting. Maybe for someone like me." A control panel blinked to life beside the pods, showing a map of the base and lines of ancient code. He placed his hand on the console. "Accessing system," the voice said again. "AI core, Sentinel active. Welcome, human engineer Ethan Hale." Ethan froze. "How does it know my name?" The voice responded calmly. "You are a descendant of registered personnel, lineage verified." Lyra looked at him amazed. "That means your people built all this?" Ethan stared at the glowing console. "Looks like it." Then the AI's tone changed, softer but heavier. "Warning. Hostile control detected on the surface. Alien interference identified. Humanity's legacy is at risk." The room lights dimmed and holograms of alien ships appeared above the pods. Rethar war fleets, burning planets, collapsing cities. Lyra trembled. "That's my world." Ethan watched in silence. "The Council, they took your people's freedom and erased ours." The AI continued. "Protocol Haven 7 initiated. Awaken one Guardian if the system identifies a living human." Alarms sounded. Red lights flashed across the room. Ethan stepped back. "Wait, what's happening?" The pod in front of him began to hiss, steam pouring out. The frost melted, and the man inside slowly opened his eyes. Lyra hid behind Ethan, terrified. The pod opened with a loud click, and the man took his first breath in centuries. He looked around, then at Ethan, his voice cracked. "How long? Have I slept?" Ethan stepped forward slowly. "A long time, Captain," he said quietly. "The war is over, but not the way we hoped. The captain stared at him, then at the small alien girl beside him. An alien? He said, frowning. Ethan nodded. She's with me, she's not the enemy. The man's eyes softened. If you trust her, that's enough. He looked around the ruined chamber, whispering. Then maybe... It's time humanity woke up again. Project Haven awakens Captain. Rel stood silent for a long time, staring at the glowing consoles and sleeping pods around him. The air was cold, thick with the smell of metal and dust. His eyes carried the weight of another century, yet his voice was calm, steady. How long have we been buried here? He asked again. Ethan replied quietly. At least 200 years, maybe more. Rel looked down, his hand brushing over the pod beside him. So the plan worked, he whispered. They didn't find us. Lyra stepped forward slowly, her small voice breaking the silence. You're human like him? Rel turned his gaze toward her, surprised. He studied her glowing eyes, her soft blue skin, and said gently, You're from Rethar? She nodded nervously. Yes, sir, he sighed. And you're not afraid of us? Lyra shook her head. No, not him. He helped me. Something softened in the captain's face. He looked at Ethan and said, You brought one of them down here. That's bold. Ethan smiled faintly. She was just a child digging through trash for her mother's birthday gift. Rel blinked, surprised. So the children still love their parents, even after all this? Ethan nodded. Some things never change. The captain placed his hand on the glowing console, and the AI's voice filled the room again. Command access restored. Awaiting directives, Rel spoke clearly. Show me the status of Project Haven. The hologram appeared in front of them, a map of underground chambers spreading miles beneath the city. Thousands of pods, supply rooms, weapon vaults, and tunnels connecting secret exits to the surface. The captain's eyes widened. By the stars. It's all still here, the AI spoke again. Surface conditions unstable, alien control confirmed. Human activity prohibited. Rel clenched his fists. So they rule now, Ethan said softly. Yes. And they tell everyone humans never existed. Lyra looked down, ashamed. They told us humans were monsters. Rel turned to her gently. Monsters don't help little girls in the dark. He began walking through the chamber, checking consoles and equipment. Power cells are weak, he muttered. But the cores still respond, Ethan followed, watching as the captain worked with the same precision Ethan had only dreamed of. You were an engineer? Ethan asked. Rel smiled faintly. No, son. I built ships, not graves. Lyra tilted her head. Ships? Rel nodded. Starships, ones that carried people through the stars before your kind could walk. Her eyes glowed with awe. Can humans fly between stars? Rel looked at her gently. We didn't just fly, child. We built empires out there. Suddenly, the AI's tone changed. Warning. Multiple heat signatures approaching from the surface tunnels. Ethan froze. Guards, the hologram flashed red, showing a cluster of moving dots heading toward their location. Rel's voice hardened instantly. They've found us. He ran to the console, typing fast. We can't fight them here, not yet. He opened another panel, revealing a narrow escape tunnel behind the pods. Quickly take her, he said. I'll delay them. Ethan shook his head. No, we go together. Rel frowned. You don't understand what's above us. They'll destroy everything if they find this place. Lyra stepped forward suddenly, clutching the small metal heart. Please don't leave, she said. You said humans don't give up. Rel stared at her for a moment, then smiled, the first real smile he'd shown. You're right, little one, he said softly. We don't. He slammed his palm on the control pad. The walls shifted. Sealing the outer tunnels, the lights dimmed, and hidden turrets emerged from the ceiling. Aiming toward the entrance, Ethan stared in disbelief. You're going to fight them? Rel's voice was calm. No, son, I'm going to remind them what humanity truly is. He turned toward Ethan and Lyra. Go deeper, he ordered. Find the core and activate the beacon. Ethan frowned. Beacon? Rel nodded. The signal that tells the stars humanity survived. As the first explosion hit the outer door, the chamber shook violently. Ethan grabbed Lyra's hand and ran toward the escape tunnel. Behind them, Captain Rel stood tall in the flickering light, facing the smoke and fire. Lyra looked back one last time, whispering, Please don't die, human. Rel's voice echoed through the chamber. strong and fearless. If death comes, child, it will find me standing. The beacon of humanity, Ethan and Lyra ran through the narrow escape tunnel. The ground shook behind them as explosions thundered through the base. Dust fell from the ceiling and the air grew thick with smoke. Ethan could still hear the captain's last words echoing in his mind. "Find the core and activate the beacon," Lyra stumbled. And Ethan caught her quickly. Her small hands were shaking, her face pale under the dim light. "Is Captain Rel going to be okay?" she asked softly. Ethan looked down. Not sure what to say. "He's human," he said finally. "And humans don't fall easy." They reached the end of the tunnel, where a metal door blocked their path. A faded handprint scanner glowed faintly beside it. Ethan placed his hand on the glass, a soft beep echoed, and the door hissed open with a rush of cold air. They stepped into a vast chamber, unlike anything Lyra had ever seen. The ceiling was high and curved like a dome, filled with cables and glowing lines of blue light. In the center stood a giant sphere suspended by metal arms, the beacon core. Its surface shimmered faintly, covered with ancient symbols and circuits. Lyra whispered, "It's beautiful." Ethan nodded. "It's human." He walked toward the console at the base. Brushing off the dust, the screen flickered to life. Lines of text appearing one by one. Project Haven. Final phase. Signal transmission locked. He frowned. Locked? The AI's voice returned, soft but urgent. "Beacon requires dual authorization. Human and allied species." Ethan blinked. "Allied species?" Lyra tilted her head, confused. "What does it mean?" she asked. He looked at her with a faint smile. "It means you," she gasped. "Me? But I'm not human." Ethan knelt beside her, his voice calm. "No, but you're the reason we need to wake this thing." He pointed to the beacon. "It doesn't just call humans. It calls hope. Every being who believes we're more than enemies." Lyra hesitated, staring at her small hands. "They said humans brought war," she whispered. Ethan nodded slowly. "Maybe we did, but we also brought light, courage, and love, things the galaxy forgot." He placed her hand on the console beside his own. "Let's remind them," he said. The beacon glowed brighter, scanning both of them. "Authorization accepted," the AI said. "Preparing transmission." A deep hum filled the chamber. The walls trembled as streams of light rose from the floor and wrapped around the beacon core. Lyra gasped as the light reflected in her eyes. Ethan watched in awe. It was like watching a star being born. Then the AI spoke again. Message integrity confirmed. Initiating broadcast. A holographic figure appeared. The same human woman they had seen before. Now clearer than ever, her voice was warm and strong. "To those who find this, we are humanity and we do not vanish," the beacon pulsed, sending waves of light through the ceiling. Across the city above, lights flickered, comms glitched, and the alien skies shimmered with golden energy. Lyra covered her ears as the deep hum grew louder. "What's happening?" Ethan smiled. "The stars are listening above them." Ships orbiting Rethar 9 received the signal. Frequencies carrying human code. Coordinates and a single message. Humanity endures. Back in the ruins, alien soldiers paused as the ground vibrated beneath their feet. For a brief moment, every screen in the alien command centers flickered with the same symbol. A glowing human handprint. The same one Ethan had found on the wall. The beacon slowly dimmed, its task complete. Ethan looked at Lyra, his voice quiet. "You did it?" She smiled softly. Tears in her eyes. "No, we did." Then a faint sound came through the chamber's speakers. Static, followed by a human voice. "This is Fleet Command. Receiving unknown signal. Coordinates confirmed." "Repeat, confirmed. All ships prepare for contact." Ethan's breath caught. Lyra looked up in wonder. "What does that mean?" Ethan smiled through the tears forming in his eyes. "It means, little one, we're not alone anymore." When the stars answered far above the ruined city, the sky began to shimmer. The stars flickered as if something massive moved between them. Rethar patrol ships turned in confusion, their scanners flooded with strange signals. The alien commanders barked orders, but the interference grew stronger. Their screens glowed with a single symbol, the human handprint. Bright and defiant, deep underground, Ethan and Lyra stood before the fading beacon. Its hum had softened, but its light still pulsed gently. Ethan stared upward, his heart racing. He could feel it. The air itself was changing. Lyra tugged his sleeve, her voice small and filled with wonder. Is that them? The humans in the stars? He nodded slowly. Yes. They heard us. The AI's voice returned, quiet but filled with power. Signal confirmed. Long-range response detected. Human fleet approaching. Ethan blinked, barely able to breathe. The fleet? He whispered. After all these years? Lyra gasped, eyes wide. They're coming here? The AI replied. Estimated arrival, 12 hours. Above ground, the alien council chambers erupted in chaos. The Rethar commanders argued, screens flashing red warnings. Impossible! One shouted, humans were extinct. But the radar told another story. Dozens of massive energy signatures appeared at the edge of the system, moving fast. Too organized to be random. The skies trembled as the first of the human ships dropped out of warp. They were sleek, silver and scarred, old but alive. Their engines burned blue, and their hull still bore the ancient Earth crest. A circle of stars around a single shining world. In the tunnels, Ethan and Lyra felt the tremor of engines rumbling through the ground. The beacon responded, linking to the incoming fleet. Transmission stable, the AI said. Surface location marked for recovery. Ethan looked at Lyra with disbelief. They're coming for us. But then the smile faded, replaced by worry. Captain Rel, he whispered. He's still up there. Lyra's eyes filled with tears. He said he would stand. Ethan took a deep breath. And humans keep their word. He checked his tool belt, grabbed his flashlight, and looked at the tunnel leading back up. Come on, he said. We're not leaving him behind. They climbed for hours through broken passages and rubble, until the tunnel opened into the main chamber again. Smoke filled the air and the ground was cracked from explosions. Bodies of alien soldiers lay scattered, their armor burned and shattered. Ethan coughed, waving away the smoke. Rel! He shouted. A weak voice answered from behind a collapsed console. Here, Ethan rushed forward. Lifting debris with trembling hands, the captain was alive. Barely, his uniform torn, his chest bleeding. You made it, he said with a faint smile. The beacon? Ethan nodded, activated. They heard it, Rel's eyes softened. Then, humanity has risen again. Lyra knelt beside him, holding his hand gently. Please, don't close your eyes, she whispered. He looked at her with a kind smile. You remind me of my daughter. She blinked, confused. You had one? He nodded weakly. A long time ago. She'd be your age now. If time had been kind. The ground shook again, louder this time. Ethan looked up. Through a hole in the ceiling, bright light poured down. Lyra gasped, pointing upward through the smoke. They saw it. A massive ship descending, surrounded by golden thrusters and blue light. Its shape was like a spear of light cutting through the darkness. The human fleet had arrived. The AI's voice echoed faintly from the console. Recovery vessel landing. Prepare for extraction. Ethan looked at Lyra. They're here, he whispered. She smiled through her tears. Your people came back. He nodded slowly, voice trembling. They always do. As the light grew brighter, the old walls of the alien city began to crumble. For the first time in centuries, the world of Rethar saw what it had forgotten, the power of humanity. Not as conquerors, but as survivors and standing beneath the falling dust. A little alien girl held the hand of a human man watching the stars come home. When humans came home, the sky burned with light as the first human ships broke through the clouds. Their engines thundered across the alien world, shaking towers and mountains alike. Every creature on Rethar looked up, stunned. The stories of extinct humans were suddenly alive again. Columns of fire streaked downward as the fleet began to land. To the frightened aliens, it looked like stars themselves were falling. Ethan shielded his eyes from the glare as the largest ship descended above the ruins. Its hull gleamed silver under the twin moons. Bearing the faded emblem of Earth, blue thrusters roared as it slowed, creating a storm of dust around them. Lyra's small hand clutched his arm tightly. They're really here, she whispered. Her voice trembling between fear and awe. Ethan smiled faintly. Yeah. They kept their promise. Captain Rel struggled to stand, leaning on Ethan's shoulder. The ship's landing ramp extended with a deep metallic hiss. Figures appeared through the haze. Armored humans in dark suits, their visors glowing faintly blue. The first soldier stepped forward, scanning the area, then his helmet retracted, revealing a young woman with tired but determined eyes. Her voice cracked over the comm. Ground Team Alpha confirmed human signature, and one non-human minor. Her gaze met Ethan's and she froze, disbelief crossing her face. Are you really one of us? Ethan nodded slowly, his throat tight. Name's Ethan Hale, survivor from the lower sectors. The woman lowered her weapon and smiled softly. Then welcome home. Hale. She turned toward the others. Command. We found them. Project Haven is real. The radio filled with static. Then a man's voice answered, heavy with emotion. Copy that, Alpha. All ships stand by. Humanity has returned. Behind them, the alien patrols finally arrived. Rethar soldiers surrounded the ruins, weapons raised, eyes wide in shock. Their commander shouted, Stand down! No one fire! But fear spread through the ranks. They had grown up hearing that humans were demons from the old wars. Now those legends stood alive before them. Wrapped in light, Captain Rel stepped forward weakly, his uniform torn and stained with dust. He looked up at the descending flag of Earth fluttering in the hot wind. Never thought I'd see that again, he whispered. One of the human soldiers caught his arm to steady him. Sir, you were one of the originals? Rel nodded faintly. I was, and I waited. The aliens watched, frozen between confusion and fear. Then Lyra stepped forward, small, trembling, but brave. She raised the rusty metal heart she had found in the trash, holding it up high. My mom's birthday is today, she said softly, voice barely a whisper against the roaring engines. And this human saved me. Her words carried through the silence like a spark through dry air. Even the alien commander lowered his weapon, eyes softening as he saw the child standing beside a human. For the first time in generations, there was no hate in that look, only wonder. Ethan rested his hand on Lyra's shoulder. She's the reason this started, he said quietly. She reminded me why we fight, not for revenge, but for hope. Captain Rel smiled weakly. She's proof that humanity can still teach the galaxy something it forgot. Kindness. The human officer turned toward her ship, signaling the crew. Medical team, get down here. We're bringing everyone up. She looked back at Ethan. Command wants to meet the man who lit the beacon. Ethan laughed softly. Guess I'll have to clean up first, Lyra giggled, the sound cutting through the heavy air like sunlight through clouds. Above them, hundreds of ships hovered silently, engines humming like distant thunder. For the first time in centuries, human voices filled alien skies, and as the wind carried the sound of the flag snapping in the air, Rethar and human stood side by side beneath the same light. No longer enemies, only survivors of the same story. The gift of two worlds, the sun rose slowly over Rethar, spilling gold light across the shattered skyline for the first time in centuries. The morning sky carried two banners, the sigil of Earth and the crest of Rethar, both waving side by side. The long night of fear and silence had ended. Ethan stood on the landing platform outside the human flagship, the wind tugging at his torn jacket. The air smelled of dust and burning metal, yet somehow it felt new, clean. Lyra stood beside him, her small hands gripping the metal heart she had found days ago. It was still rusty, but now it gleamed faintly under the sun. She smiled softly. I think my mom will like it, Ethan chuckled. I think she'll love it. Because you didn't just bring her a gift. Kid, you brought her peace. Behind them, Captain Rel leaned against a railing. Wrapped in a medical band, his wounds were healing slowly. But his spirit looked stronger than ever. He watched the human engineers unload supplies, crates marked with the old Earth insignia. Food, medicine, and something even rarer, hope. Rel turned to Ethan, his voice quiet but proud. You reminded the stars who we are, he said. You gave humanity back its name. The alien commander approached cautiously, his armor dimmed, no longer glowing with threat. He bowed his head slightly, an ancient gesture of respect. The council requests peace, he said. We believed lies about your kind. Ethan nodded. Then stop believing lies and start building truth. The commander's voice trembled. We will. High above, the human fleet spread across orbit. Gleaming against the morning light, shuttles moved between ships and the surface, carrying wounded supplies, and scientists eager to study what remained of the lost human base. The beacon still pulsed faintly underground, not as a call for rescue, but as a promise kept. Lyra tugged on Ethan's sleeve. Will you go back to the stars now? He looked at her, thinking deeply. Maybe, he said softly, but not before making sure your people understand what humans really are. She tilted her head. What are you, really? He smiled, eyes warm and distant. Builders, he said. We build bridges out of ashes, homes out of ruins. And family out of strangers, Rel laughed quietly. That's the line I'll remember. He looked toward the alien city beyond the horizon. Do you know, he said, the last thing our ancestors wrote before going into stasis? Ethan shook his head. Rel smiled faintly, quoting from memory. When the stars forget our name, we will return not as conquerors, but as reminders. He looked at Lyra. I think that time has come. A chime echoed through the air, the sound of a new broadcast. Screens across Rethar lit up, showing both human and alien leaders standing side by side. The human commander spoke first, her voice steady and clear. Let this day mark not the return of war, but the rebirth of friendship. Then the alien chancellor followed. For centuries we feared the ghosts of humanity. Today we call them brothers. Crowds filled the streets below, aliens and humans together, watching the moment unfold. Children of both species laughed as they traded trinkets and stories. And somewhere among them, Lyra placed her little metal heart into her mother's hands. Her mother smiled, tears in her eyes. It's beautiful, Lyra whispered. It's from the trash. But he said gifts that come from love are honest. From the flagship's deck. Ethan watched the two worlds breathe as one. He looked up at the sky, the same sky that had once burned with war, and smiled. Happy birthday, kid, he said quietly. Not just to Lyra's mom, but to an entire galaxy that had finally woken from its long, fearful sleep. The beacon dimmed for the last time, its duty complete. Above it, the human fleet spread its wings like silver birds across the dawn. And below, on the once divided world of Rethar, humanity and aliens walked into a future together, not as enemies but as family.